Like, I know I messed up on this pick, and how do I get out of it?
It just didn't work out, and you missed on the eval.
Why? Immediately, I'm asking myself that. Learn from our mistakes, because we do fuck up more than enough.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to our second ever episode of the DU Trade Archives. If you joined us for our first one, you know what we're about, what we're here for. We are going to go over some past trades, recount some past trades, try to self-reflect, try to learn something from it, dig into these, kind of learn about the context, what happened at the time, and see what we can find out. So this edition, Jake is going to go over a couple trades that he made and see if we can glean something from these. So Jake, hit us. What you got?
Yeah. All right. We're in rookie fever territory right now, so I figured this would be a great trade to kind of bring up to everybody. Man, it honestly hurts to look at. So last offseason, we're talking a couple of months after our startup. We're touching right around, I think we might have actually, we're in the middle of our rookie draft. I think we're sitting at the 107 is on the clock. The pick goes in, and I immediately send a trade for my 2024 first and my 2025 second for the 108 and the 406 that year. Why? Immediately, I'm asking myself that after I've sent it, because I really wanted Quentin Johnston. That was it. That was, as stupid as that sounds in retrospect. I really thought to myself, Quentin Johnston, he's the guy. I had really dove into a lot of his tape. I honestly thought that his upside was going to be able to basically catapult him into a situation in Los Angeles that he would really be a valuable pick there. I sat there thinking to myself, this feels like a pretty decent value for me. I got, the extra lottery ticket at the end, and I expected myself to compete. I end up finishing in the 2023 season as the first playoff team out. So equivalent to the 107. Don't know what is going to happen in 2024, but I'm hoping to compete. So I'm hoping that's going to be a late second. But knowing this, what are your thoughts on the first trade, Billy?
Yeah, I mean, I can't fault you that much. I did have a share of Quentin Johnston myself. I had to pick him somewhere in a similar range. So I can't sit here and be like, what an idiot. But just looking at the board here, Quentin Johnston, you selected at 108. Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers go both right after. And even back then, I mean, obviously, again, I think the one Quentin Johnston share I had, I was like, sure, I'll diversify a little bit here. I'll take my one share here. But 9 times out of 10, I'm taking one of those other guys. So I'm a little surprised that you were so into QJ back then. I don't know if I knew that back then or if I recall. But just given the options that were on the board, I was just kind of surprised that that's what you did. And you didn't have another pick any earlier than that to kind of work with either. So that's part of why you jumped up there, obviously, as you were trying to get into that first round and select a wide receiver, I guess is what it was.
Yeah, I had the 101 and I took Bijan, and then I didn't have another first.
Okay, that's what it was. I missed that. Okay, so yeah. And I can't even say I would have held. I think the process was good. I actually think the trade would have looked fine if you selected a Jordan Addison or Zay Flowers. You would have been totally happy with that if it just ended there and that's what you did. So yeah, again, I think the move, you saw opportunity. We talk about this all the time, trying to jump up in there when you see opportunity. I think this was smart. Going a year out and doing that. It just didn't work out, and you missed on the eval.
Yep, exactly. But here's the crazy thing, and you'll see in the second trade, we're not talking about even more than a month and a half. We're talking a month and about a week. We're talking rookie camp has just started. I'm reading some of the beat writers talking about QJ. I'm seeing some of the tape. Mm-hmm. I'm saying to myself, there's something about this guy that lacks confidence, and I'm all about obnoxious wide receivers. I want those guys who are the infamous Terrell Owens running into the middle of a stadium, dropping the ball into the middle and saying, F you to the Cowboys, right?
Arrogance. You want arrogance.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Cockiness, arrogance. I want character. I want personality. QJ looked like a sad puppy amongst pros, and I didn't want it. And so I saw that, and I said to myself, well, I know I fucked up. Like, I know I messed up on this pick. And how do I get out of it? Honestly, at the time, I was incredibly high on Drake London. I was incredibly high on what was going on in Atlanta, like a lot of other people were. I was saying to myself, Desmond Ridder got about 6 games in towards the end of his rookie season. Maybe this is an opportunity for him to grow into his sophomore year or his second year in the NFL. And, Drake, Kyle Pitts, this could be a little situation that could be, pretty profitable. I started sending out some offers, and I knew that, there weren't a lot of people who were necessarily down on QJ yet. So like there was still a lot of hype coming off of the rookie draft. Like I said, it only happened about a month and a week prior to this trade. So I sent out my 2024 second and QJ for Drake London and a 2025 third, also knowing that the team that I was sending this over to was kind of in, I wouldn't call it a perpetual rebuild, but I kind of foresee this owner putting their team in a perpetual rebuild. So I was like, this could be, honestly, this second round pick and the third round pick could be pretty close to one another. I'm not losing that much of a gap in draft capital, and I'm gaining a Drake London who, in all honesty, in 2022 was a top 3 rookie pick in rookie drafts in Dynasty. So
yep.
I saw myself only gaining value from an asset perspective. I know his value dropped a little bit because of his rookie year, but I was more than happy with a lot of his advanced metrics. I was very happy with what I saw on tape, and I really wanted to put myself in a situation where I was kind of owning a little bit more of Drake London. Now I probably own a little too much, but that's another tale. So,
I don't think you can own too much Drake London, brother.
Yeah. With the Kirk Cousins move, this is looking really nice. And it really put me in a situation where I saw the time to pivot because the window of opportunity was still there for me. I understood that I probably went the wrong route in that rookie draft a couple of weeks prior, or I guess 5 weeks prior to this. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to double down on my loss. Instead, I'm going to suck up my ego, get rid of this asset that I probably overpaid for, and go get an asset that I actually do want on my team. And that's what I did. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I love this because I think, there's 2 lessons. It's, admitting when you may have made a mistake, but it's also being able to stay in the loop and read situations and have some foresight, right? And it really is important. Being in the loop when you're playing Dynasty fantasy football, like understanding what's going on in the league, staying up to date with the news, listening to beat writers, it's an underrated aspect of the game. And you do have to be discerning. Don't get me wrong. Not every piece of news is important. But if you've paid attention as long as Jake and I have, and you're paying attention to the league on a daily basis, you can be fairly discerning and understand what's BS and what's actual news and try to read the tea leaves. And I think Jake did such a great job here of understanding what was going on with Quentin Johnston. He does bring up a great point, which I don't even think that I really keyed in on, which was he's a really docile guy. Like he's not like this, his own hype man. He doesn't bring a lot of flair outside of whenever he can make a big play on the field. And that is a factor, that's his personality, that's his character, that's who he is. And if you're not already a great player, if that's the kind of person are you going to have the drive to get there? Right. And like, these are just kind of all the things you have to consider. But then you look at, Jake's looking around the board and he's going, well, Drake London, who again, he mentioned a top 3 guy in the draft the year before, obviously a much better talent than Quentin Johnston, who is, in the middle of this other draft. Let me go out and swap risky, quote unquote, risky assets and make up for my mistake, when I think in reality, swapping Quentin Johnston for Drake London is an absolute no-brainer. And the difference between the second and the third is not enough to make up for that at all. So, I just think going from April to June, which is not a long time for Jake to be able to say to himself, okay, like that wasn't the right move. And yeah, I did give up a good amount, but I'm not going to hold on to the acquisition cost. I'm going to go ahead and just make a move for a guy who I actually believe in. Like, just such a great move. And really, it prevented you from doing what we talked about in the first episode that I was doing, undervaluing and overvaluing the wrong assets, right? And being hasty with that. Like, granted, you did this quick, but you didn't give up value when you made the trade. You at the very least went lateral, but no way anybody could actually think of that looking at this trade. You upgraded your risk, right? Like your risk level decreased slightly going from Quentin Johnston to Drake London. So, I mean, I love it. I think that you applied some really interesting aspects of Dynasty fantasy football to kind of get this done. It wasn't just like, I like this player and I traded this value. It was, you really looked into the situations and made some decisions based on what you were seeing. And not everybody can do that. I do think that there's something to, again, being really keyed into what's going on. But yeah, great example of it, man. I love this trade for you. I mean, I love this sequence of events for you. I think that it highlights a really good way to go about it if you find yourself in a predicament where you bought something that you're no longer happy with. This reminds me, I do think our third episode may be on the sequence of events where I ended up getting rid of QJ and Jerry Jeudy in our Console Wars Dynasty League because I acquired both of those guys and I shouldn't have. And it was the same thing as you, where I kind of realized it very quickly and was able to calmly make a move to tier up from that situation. So just, foreshadowing a future episode, but I do think that there is some similarities between those two sequences of events.
Yeah, no. And to your point, I love how you tied in episode 1, and hopefully we're going to tie in episode 3 to this. Like, I think the biggest factor that I want to just kind of drive to the viewer is really just about, that learning experience and kind of drawing away that there's going to be a lot of inevitable themes in bad trades. And it's really important for us as just like individual Dynasty fantasy football players to kind of pinpoint where our own weaknesses are so we can kind of prevent ourselves from doing that moving forward. So, this is a new year. It's 2024, which means it's another season of overhyping rookies. And I just now know what I did last year is exactly what I want to stay away from this year. So like, my actual process has become significantly more refined. Billy can speak to that himself. He sees that I'm actually watching a ton more tape. I'm keeping my notes to myself, but the process is now about how do I gain that advantage that I obviously didn't have last offseason, that situation where I knew I was losing out to my competitors and they were taking advantage of, and being able to gain, the 107 this year and next year second for QJ. How do I get out of that situation? So, hopefully that's the stuff that you could take away from these Dynasty Underdog trade archive episodes, because I do think that we really want to try and hone in on learn from our mistakes, because we do fuck up more than enough.
Yeah, for sure, man. I think that, Jake always nails the dismount, absolutely crushed that for sure. And I do think that, people look at, I do consider myself an analyst personally. And I think people do look at analysts sometimes like they don't make or they think they don't make mistakes. No. We make plenty of mistakes over here. Okay. Like that's not the point. It's how can you go about finding solutions, right? Like, how can you go about making the best of a mistake? That's really what it's about. So yeah, thank you all for joining us for our second edition of the DU Trade Archives. Jake, thank you for being here. This has been really enjoyable. I'm actually really excited about this series. So everybody stay tuned for more and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Peace out.